From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Trails on several of Colorado's 14ers are getting a facelift this summer. Mount Democrat, Mount Bierstadt, Mount Blue Sky, and Mount Chavano are some of Colorado's most popular mountains for hikers, but some of the trails on them are in rough shape. A nonprofit called the Colorado 14ers Initiative is working this summer to update trail routes on those mountains to eliminate erosion and generally protect the surrounding tundra. Crews move boulders, install steps, and even restore plant life. Workers grapple with dehydration and altitude sickness.
Smash fingers and pinching your hands under a rock or something is not fun, but it happens.
That's Tom Cronin. He's the field programs manager for the Colorado 14ers Initiative, or CFI, and he has lots of experience managing these trail projects. He joined me to talk about what the work is like and how these eroding trails fell into disrepair in the first place.
Most, actually, of the 14er trails were user-created trails that basically were just created by hikers that wanted the quickest route from the road or the trailhead to the summit. And essentially, they became very unsustainable and were susceptible to a lot of erosion because those trails kind of run straight fall line and really were not designed or laid out in any way to consider resource damage or anything like that.
And do you find that these problems kind of snowball a little bit when you have an eroded trail that compounds and leads to greater erosion?
They do, absolutely. Years ago, when these kind of user-created routes started, oftentimes these routes were a single-track trail, meaning that they were like 12 or 18 inches wide. And then, as the popularity of the 14ers continued and more hikers got out on the mountains, those trails began to widen and widen and widen. And then, rain event, more water comes down the trail, therefore more erosion occurs and just kind of exacerbates the problem. So there's places on some of the trails that still don't have a sustainable route where the trail could be 10 or 15 feet wide in places, which is absolutely crazy.
Ooh. We often see jam-packed trailheads on the weekends, and of course, we read more about more people coming to Colorado. How much of the degradation of the trails is caused by simply too many people using them?
Yeah, that's a tough question. The trails that have yet to have a sustainable route actually constructed on them, those ones, if they have a ton of people on them, see far worse damage by large numbers of people. But a properly designed and built trail should be able to accommodate large amounts of people with seeing relatively minimal damage to it.
Tom, one of the projects that your organization is working on is the Mount Chavano Trail, which your executive director described as the biggest, burliest, most expensive project the Colorado 14ers Initiative has taken on. What makes that project so cumbersome?
Yeah, that project is very, very large. And then also, too, the work site is extremely challenging. But yeah, to give you some context, that project, all said and done, will be about 3.5 miles of brand new trail that CFI is building. It's broken into 2 separate reroutes. And then interestingly on that project too, the upper reroute actually shoots out like right on the summit, which is one of the few trails that CFI has ever built that literally goes to the summit. It's like at this point, it's about a 3-mile hike with 3,000 feet of elevation gain to get to the work site.
Whoa.
On the upper project. So it's a really challenging project, no doubt.
That's amazing. I never thought about it, but just getting to the work site is tough in and of itself, let alone the work that you're doing when you get there.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little more about what the work entails. Some of the grades on the Mount Chavano Trail are 30% or greater. How does a crew go about correcting for something like a steep, eroding part of the trail?
When we're designing and laying out these trails on the 14ers, we're often looking for, the most durable surface that we can put the trail on. And we've found that putting the trails in talus fields, the big rock fields up there on the mountainsides, putting the trails through that is kind of the most durable surface. So oftentimes we'll actually take the trail out of the alpine tundra area and out of areas that have a lot of soil and then put it into rock. So that's one way. And then we'll build rock steps and rock retaining walls and, all different types of structures to try to make the trail long lasting and sustainable.
This is obviously incredibly physically demanding work. Is there a fitness test required for people who apply for this job?
No fitness test. But I will
Okay.
say, yeah, it does require a high level of fitness. And I think it requires people to be not only physically, very strong, but also mentally. It certainly presents a lot of challenges every day.
I think it's also worth noting that crews don't get to head down the mountain at the end of the day and enjoy a nice bubble bath to ease those aches and pains. You set up camp on the mountain, and crews do shifts of 8 days on and 6 days off. Can you take me through a day in the life of a crew member?
Yeah, we found that the 8 days on, 6 days off just makes the most sense because once you get up there, you really need to get invested in the work. And you can just imagine if we were just driving to the trailhead every morning, hiking up and hiking down, and then driving back to our duty station, we would hardly get anything done. So it's a great
Yeah.
way to really get invested in the project to work 8 days at a time. But essentially, yeah, our crews work 8 10-hour days in a row, which obviously is really intense.
Yeah.
We get alpine starts, and some of our crews that are working up high, they actually start their day, they leave camp at 4 a.m.
Mm,
and then they're back at camp by 2 p.m. The reason we start so early is to kind of mitigate the impact and offset the risk of monsoonal thunderstorms that we experience in summer
sure.
here in Colorado. So, yeah, the crews often are eating breakfast at 3:30 in the morning and eating dinner at 4 p.m. and in bed by 6 or 7.
Tom, how long will the overhauled trails hold up before they'll need more repairs?
Yeah, that's a great question too, Erin. There's really no reason a well-designed, well-constructed trail won't hold up for decades, if not longer. We often try to build a lot of the rock structures that we build to like a 50 or even 100-year standard,
Mm,
meaning that we expect those structures to last 100 years. And really the biggest thing too that affects the longevity is the grade and the layout of the trail. So during the design process, like we are looking at all the grades and trying to run as minimal grades as we can across these slopes
mhm.
in an effort to mitigate erosion, because the biggest threat to any trail basically is water and how steep it is. And so if it's too steep and there's a lot of water, it's not going to last.
Well, finally, Tom, what can hikers do to help preserve the revamped trails?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, and it's a simple one, is just stay on the trail, pay attention to the signs. I think that's really the biggest thing.
Number
It's
one.
it's no, it's such a simple thing, but truly many of the plants that we find in the alpine too, if they're trampled as little as 3 to 5 times, can die.
Mm.
So by just simply staying on the trail and walking on a durable surface, that makes all the difference.
Tom Cronin is the Field Programs Manager for the Colorado 14ers Initiative. They're busy revamping and rerouting trails on some of Colorado's most popular 14ers this summer. You can learn more in our show notes and at KUNC.org. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.